The rain had returned to Seoul.
It was soft at first.
Just a light pattering on the roof tiles of the small, aging house nestled between the towering apartment blocks of Mapogu. The old structure stood stubbornly against the polished steel skyline, as if it refused to be forgotten. Inside, the silence was heavy, until the front door creaked open. Minjun stepped in, dripping with water, the shoulders of his coat soaked. He didn't bother removing his shoes. The weight of the day still clung to him. Contracts, clients, missed calls, unread emails. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. He ignored it. "Yama," he called, not loudly, just enough to be heard over the tapping rain. "I'm home." From the living room came the faint scrape of a wheelchair. Eun-suk, his mother, slowly turned the corner. Her hands trembled slightly on the armrests. A woolen shawl hung over her shoulders, her frame more fragile than the last time he had really looked at her. "You're late again," she said softly. "You skipped lunch too. I saved your favorite, kimchi stew." Minjun's jaw tightened. Not today. Not after everything at work. Not after his boss humiliated him in front of the team. "I told you I don't have time to eat in the middle of the day," he replied, harsher than he intended. "I'm trying to keep this job. It's not like before." His mother nodded slowly, as if bracing herself. She had heard that tone before. Too many times lately. "I know," she said. "I just thought, maybe it would comfort you."
He didn't respond.
Instead, he walked past her, into the kitchen. The stew sat cold on the stove, untouched. The silence returned, deeper than before. Later that evening, Minjun sat in his room, laptop glowing against the darkness. His mother's soft cough echoed from the hallway. Then a crash. A glass falling. He rushed out to find her struggling to pick it up. "I'm fine," she whispered. But her fingers were bleeding. "Why didn't you call me?" he snapped. "I didn't want to disturb you." Minjun stared at her, the frustration boiling over. "You're always disturbing me. Every day. Every hour. I can't breathe. I can't live like this." Her face didn't change, but her eyes flickered. Pain, without tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He didn't answer. That night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the rain now steady, like a metronome counting out regrets. Morning light filtered through the gauze curtains, pale and muted. Seoul stirred beyond the window. Buses honking, scooters buzzing, and street vendors setting up for the day. Inside the house, there was only silence, broken occasionally by the rhythmic tick of a dusty wall clock. Minjun stood by the sink, his hands gripping the counter. He hadn't slept. He kept replaying his own words from the night before. "You're always disturbing me. I can't live like this." He closed his eyes, guilt creeping through him like slow-moving smoke. A soft knock came at the front door. 3 taps. Then a pause. It was Mrs. Beck, their elderly neighbor from across the alley. She lived alone, but somehow always knew when something wasn't right. She stepped inside uninvited, holding a thermos of barley tea. "I heard glass break last night," she said. "Is your mother all right?" "She's fine," Minjun replied shortly. Mrs. Beck placed the thermos on the table and sat down, her joints stiff. "You know, when you were a baby, your mother used to carry you every day. Up and down that hill outside, even in the snow." Minjun looked away. "She gave up her teaching job for you. Stayed home all those years, even when she could barely afford medicine for herself." He remained silent. "Children forget things," she continued. "But the mothers never do." Minjun clenched his jaw. He wasn't in the mood for stories. But her words hung in the air, like smoke after a fire. Later that afternoon, he walked past his mother's room. The door was slightly ajar. She was asleep, her breathing light, almost fragile. On her nightstand was a faded photo of the two of them, him as a toddler in her arms, smiling. His hand hesitated on the doorknob. But he didn't go in. That evening, while sorting through old papers near the living room cabinet, a yellowed envelope slipped out from behind a drawer. On the front, in soft handwriting, was his name. It was his mother's writing. Minjun sat on the edge of the couch, the envelope resting in his lap. The house was still, The only sound of faint were from the refrigerator and the muffled hum of the city outside. He hesitated before opening it. The paper inside was old, folded neatly. His mother's handwriting flowed across the page, slow and graceful, like someone who took care with every word. My dearest Minjun, if you're reading this, it means you're old enough to face truths I never wanted to say aloud. I don't write this to make you feel guilty. I write it because I know the world can be cruel, and sometimes love is forgotten in the noise of survival. You don't remember, but when you were 5, you stopped walking. The doctors called it temporary trauma. Your father had just left. I carried you for months on my back, through rain and snow, to hospitals and temples, hoping something would work. I never saw it as a burden. I saw it as a gift. Even now, when my legs fail me, I still feel strong when I see you standing tall. Please, don't let the weight of the world turn your heart into stone. With love, always, Yama. Minjun sat frozen, the letter trembling in his hands. A weight settled in his chest, not heavy like guilt, but sharp, like something had cracked. He folded the letter slowly and placed it back in the envelope. When he looked up, his mother was standing in the hallway. Her hands were on her wheels, her face unreadable. You found it, she said. He nodded, unable to speak. Her eyes, though tired, held a strange calm. I wrote that a long time ago, when you were still my little boy who loved trains and called me superhero. Minjun swallowed hard. Why didn't you ever tell me all of that? Because love isn't something you use as a weapon, she said. It's something you carry, even when it hurts. Days passed, quiet and strange. A shift had happened, like the house itself was waiting. Minjun found himself drawn to the past. He opened old boxes stored beneath the stairs, childhood toys, report cards, birthday cards drawn with crayons. And at the bottom, a tiny wooden train. He remembered it instantly, the one his mother gave him when he was ill, promising that one day they would ride a real train to the sea. But they never did. That promise had been swallowed by life. Illness, bills, survival. He stared at the train in his hands. The wheels no longer turned. Dust clung to the edges. Yet it felt more real than anything in his modern, sterile office downtown. That evening, Minjun searched for tickets. He didn't know why, maybe guilt, maybe hope. But every train to the coast was fully booked. Disappointed, he returned home late. His mother was asleep on the couch, her head tilted gently, an old drama playing softly on the television. He placed the wooden train beside her hand and whispered, I haven't forgotten. The next morning, she woke to find the toy beside her. A faint smile touched her lips. I thought this was lost. It was, he replied, like a lot of things. The sun had barely risen. Pale light spilled through the window as Minjun made breakfast. Toast, eggs, and barley tea, the same way his mother used to do for him. She entered the kitchen slowly, wheeling herself in with effort. Her shawl was slipping from her shoulders. He gently adjusted it. Are we all right? She asked, her voice soft. Minjun nodded. I don't know if I'm good at this, but I want to be. She smiled, fragile but warm. They ate in silence, but not the kind that hurt. It was a quiet filled with unspoken words and steady breaths. Then she said something unexpected. Would you take me outside today? He looked up. Just around the neighborhood. I want to feel the sun. He nodded. They spent the afternoon slowly weaving through the alleyways. Old shopkeepers greeted them. Children chased pigeons in the square. A street musician played a mournful tune on a violin. Minjun pushed her wheelchair gently. She tilted her face up to the light, eyes closed. It was the first time in weeks she looked peaceful. That night, she didn't cough. She didn't stir. She slept deeply. Minjun, however, could not. He sat awake as a storm gathered far off in the city, thunder murmuring like distant drums. Something was changing. The next morning, the house was too quiet. The teacup was untouched. The bedroom empty. The wheelchair gone. Panic rose in his chest. He searched every room, every cupboard. Nothing. The front door was unlocked. Minjun ran out into the street, scanning the alleys. Shopkeepers shook their heads. The postman hadn't seen her. Even Mrs. Beck hadn't noticed anything unusual. Then someone pointed toward the river. He ran. She was there, sitting alone on a bench beside the Han River, the wheelchair beside her, motionless. Her hair moved gently in the wind. He approached, heart pounding. "I just wanted to see the water," she said before he could speak. "Before I leave." "Leave?" She didn't turn to him. "I've been dreaming of your father lately. In the dreams, I'm walking again." Minjun knelt beside her. "You're not going anywhere." But her eyes told him otherwise. She wasn't afraid. She was preparing. That night, he didn't sleep at all. The next few days blurred. She grew weaker, her breathing shallower. She barely spoke, though her eyes followed him with quiet gratitude. On the fourth night, he found her sitting by the window, humming. A soft melody. He recognized it. A lullaby from his childhood. She used to sing it when the electricity went out, and they would lie under blankets, counting stars and pretending they were camping. He sat beside her. She took his hand, cold but firm. "Do you remember the words?" she asked.
He tried.
Fumbled. Then, together, they sang. Her voice wavered, but it carried. The song ended with a whisper. And she said, "That was the last thing I sang to you when you were too weak to walk." Minjun didn't reply. The silence that followed was heavy, but beautiful. The rain returned, thick and unrelenting. Minjun walked alone to the top of Namsan Park, his coat pulled tight around him. He carried a thermos of tea and the wooden train, now polished and wrapped in cloth. It was where she had always wanted to go but never could. He poured the tea into the soil beneath a cherry blossom tree and placed the train beneath its roots. "She's here now," he said aloud. The wind answered, brushing leaves across his feet. He stood in the rain, eyes closed. Weeks passed. Minjun returned to work. But things were different. He took lunch breaks. He called his neighbors. He smiled more, though it never reached his eyes. One morning, he looked into the mirror. For the first time, he saw both versions of himself. The son he used to be, and the man he had become. He reached into his drawer and pulled out the letter again, the paper now slightly frayed. He placed it in a frame, not to remember her suffering, but to honor her strength. Weeks passed. Minjun returned to work. But things were different. He took lunch breaks. He called his neighbors. He smiled more, though it never reached his eyes. One morning, he looked into the mirror. For the first time, he saw both versions of himself. The son he used to be, and the man he had become. He reached into his drawer and pulled out the letter again, the paper now slightly frayed. He placed it in a frame, not to remember her suffering, but to honor her strength.